The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
I'm very fortunate to be joined by Buchanan, also known for his time in All Japan Pro Wrestling, WWF, known as WWE now, and Pro Wrestling Noah, and Stampede Wrestling. Thank you for joining me, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's all right. It's an honor because you have had, like we mentioned just before we went on, a very interesting career. You spent some time in Japan, you spent some time in WWF, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And you've also been a part of a group which I would like to say didn't get the credit what it deserves. I think like it should have lasted a little bit longer than what it did.
Yeah.
I can see Right to Censor and I can see a little bit of the Judgment Day in there, but that's just me. I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
You've got four guys and then you got a female and then you've also got that way Judgment Day as well.
Yep.
Let's talk about your. Yeah, you did actually. You was the tag team champions with the Godfather.
Yep.
Talk to me about the formation of the group. How did it come about? Whose idea was it?
I'm not sure that it was one particular person's idea. I know that it was designed to poke a little fun at the parent teacher council who was breathing down our necks at the time because of all the adult programming that we were putting out. And I think guys, the Vince and Bruce and those guys, knew that we couldn't continue down the road we were going because we were having to constantly, top the last crazy thing we did. So there had to be a slowing down and a stopping point somewhere. So he basically censored himself. He used the RTC ideal and, basically censored his show. We were getting a lot of heat from USA Network, a lot of heat from the parent teacher, a lot of heat from everybody because we were really pushing the envelope as far as TV went, back then. So me and Stevie had become friends, and we were in Albany, New York, and he told me that they were putting me with him, and I knew he'd been out a few times on air with the shirt and the tie, but I didn't know exactly what he was doing. And he laid it all out to me, and I thought, that if they gave it a decent chance, it could really get a lot of heat, and it did. Especially when we started to add members to it, especially the Godfather. People hated that, and I know he did too. But understandably, because he was making a ton of money, merchandise money. He lost a lot of money doing that, but he did it well. And, we all did. We all just. It wasn't a stretch for me because I was already a heel, so it was just rolling into something else with me. But Val and even Ivory, those guys had been pretty big fan favorites, and I know that Val lost money on merchandise, so I could understand why they didn't want to do it. But at the same time, everybody, we jumped in with both feet and we got it over.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I could see the Judgment Day in Right to Censor. And I think Right to Censor, I think, is one of them that back in the early 2000s was a group that should have lasted a little bit longer than what it did. But you had Ivory as the women's champion. You had you and the Godfather as the tag team champions. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with the group. Whose idea was it to split the group?
Once again, I'm not sure that it was one person. Stevie, I can never remember his name. He was a really great guy. He was actually kind of our writer, and I always forget his name, but he was a really good dude. And after he left, we kind of had the feeling that the wheels might be coming off of it. But it was also around the time that we bought WCW, so all the angles, all the storylines, everything just kind of got jumbled up and changed due to us adding a whole nother roster to ours. Bringing in WCW guys,
Yeah.
the invasion angle and everything. But we had a feeling that, but at the same time, I feel like it could have kept going also. But I think it was just a combination of him leaving and it being the acquisition. You have to run with that storyline. I mean that trumps every. That's one of the biggest things in the history of pro wrestling happened. So how are you not going to run with that? But yeah, I felt like we could have had a little more run. I felt like if it had continued, Val would probably maybe took the Intercontinental belt or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Was there any talks after you guys broke up to maybe in a couple of years to reform, or was there any chance to bring it back, or a few members, or was there any talk like that?
No, Stevie and I still talk, and he told me a few years back that every year at Royal Rumble there's usually a discussion about bringing us back. But I don't know. I think if they don't do it pretty quick, we're all going to be too old.
Yeah.
I know that Ivory came back and did that. Did the Royal Rumble or the Women's Royal Rumble, I guess, that year.
He did.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think it's one of those things that I think we get more appreciated as time goes by, more so than we did when we were actually. I think we're more popular now than we were then.
Yeah. Do you think like you guys should go in the Hall of Fame as a group?
I don't know. I've never thought of myself in in the Hall of Fame category. It would be great. Of course, I would love it. Like I said, it seems like we get more popular as time goes by because with the way the business has went to PG programming, it almost appears like we actually did what we set out to do. So I don't know about the Hall of Fame, but I think it would be pretty cool, if one night we just showed up on Raw and took a bow for for ruining the business. And,
Yeah.
I think that would probably be great.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to pop up a picture of every member of the Right to Censor, and you can tell me whether a story or a few little lines that comes to your head or your opinion of the person, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So the first one, we will go with Val.
Wow. So underrated as a worker. He was so good, so smooth in the ring. And he had a good run. He did have a good run up there. He continued on and did the Chief Morley and all that. But the guy was so good in the ring. He should have been main eventing every night somewhere. He was a good dude too. He was easy to get along with, as everybody was. But I was always just struck by how good he was in the ring, how good of a technician he was in the ring.
Yeah. So we will do Godfather.
My buddy, my riding partner. Him, and Teddy Long were riding partners from about the time we started until after we finished. Just a good dude, man. The people that know him as some people call him Papa Shanga. But anybody that's ever met the Bear, the Godfather is happy, good time. The Bear is a whole nother entity, and people forget Charles was especially at that time, 6'5", 300 plus. He was a bad dude. But we got to be friends, got to be riding partners, and got to share the tag team title. And nobody can ever take that away from us. We were tag team champions in WWE.
Very true.
But just a good dude, and man, had so much fun. traveling with him and Teddy, and we always look forward to going on the road just because I got to hang out with my friends.
That's very true. I mean, I was very fortunate to meet Godfather back. Well, Papa Shango, the character, and then he was the Godfather. Like he was like a show in the UK back in 2018, December 2018,
Yep.
and he did like a joint show with a UK company over here. But it's like meet and greet. But then he was like Godfather, then Papa Shango. It was quite good.
Yeah.
Down to earth guy.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So the next one we will have, it's going to be Mr. Richards himself.
Stevie and I met. I did a shot in ECW before I came to WWF, and we met over there, and we got to be friends after. I think it was WrestleMania, maybe 16. Me and Big Boss Man wrestled against D'Lo and Godfather, ironically. But we hung out a little bit and went to lunch a few times at the WrestleMania that year, and then just continued to be friends and still friends this day. But there again, as much as Val was underrated as a worker, and then Stevie was a good worker too. He just at that time he wasn't really showcasing it. It was more on the mic, but he was so good on the mic. All those most of those RTC rants that he did, was just back then. They didn't really write a script. It was just maybe a bullet point or two, and then you just kind of took it and ran. And he was so good on the mic, so underrated.
I mean, he's done it everywhere as well, hasn't he? ECW, WWE, TNA.
Yeah, another guy had just a good long run in the business and deserved it.
Yeah, and then we've got Ivory.
Ivory. I watched Ivory in when she was Tina Ferrari, and I think she actually came over right before I did. She was doing the Ivory. She had the the purple sash or whatever it was. So, beautiful lady, and she intentionally made herself look plain for that gimmick. She would wear no makeup. She would slick her hair back. She would wear these. She would wear the skirt most of the time, and she would wear these 1920. I don't know even what you call them. I got bloomers or whatever the women wore that had the frilly lace. It was like leggings or something, just so she could take a bump and throw her legs up in there and have everybody see these antique underwear that she was wearing. She just she never batted an eye. They told her, "Hey, this is what we're doing," and she jumped in with both feet and did everything and helped get it over. We all did, well, whether we wanted to be there or not. Everybody worked hard to get it over, and I think it shows, in the crowd reactions that we got at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Right to Censor is a part of history, really.
Yeah, we almost have like it's like a small cult following now, but even at that time, there were people that would show up, especially in the Northeast. There would be people that showed up at the shows dressed like us or with Right to Censor signs. It's always cool to especially in the 90s, the business had changed. Steve Austin was our biggest baby face, and at any other time in history he would have been a heel. So
Yeah.
it was just another sign of the times. We actually had RTC followers, believe it or not.
Do you still speak to, apart from Stevie, do you still speak to any of them today?
Yeah, it's just everybody's so spread out. I saw Val a few years ago at a signing convention, and same with Ivory, and talk to Godfather every chance I get. But yeah, we still stay in touch.
I think that's good. Like when you've been in a group for, I know it was in a group for just over a year, but the history that you've had on the WWE, but not only, but fans now, like you mentioned, they appreciate you more. It's something to remember. And when you see them, it's like, oh, where have you been? How time flies and stuff like that. I think that's quite good that you still stay in contact and stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously that Steve Austin was the biggest babyface in the 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s. But let's talk about someone else who you've also had history with. This man.
Yeah, John Cena. Yeah.
He's been the biggest babyface for the last 2 decades. I mean, now he's part-time, but he was the biggest babyface from like 2004 onwards up until like 2017. The
Yep.
biggest star in the company. Just
Yep.
a little picture that might make you laugh.
Yeah. And that's always, people ask me all the time, and that's always if you have to, just go with your first reaction. When I think about that, it was fun. We were having fun. It was something different for me because I'd always been kind of a killer, an enforcer, bodyguard,
Yeah.
that type thing. And this was totally a different direction for me, and it was fun. And we were both. I think we were both having fun. Um, he would come up with his raps for the entrance, and he would run them by me, and we were still pushing the envelope a good bit even back then. 2000, I guess it was 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
We were still pushing the envelope on a lot of stuff. Some of the raps he would come up with were pretty brutal. I know we did one. He did one. We were working Eddie and Chavo, and I asked him. I asked him after he kind of told me what it was going to be. I remember asking him. I said, "God, are they okay with this? Or they might be ready to fight after we do this." But they were totally cool with it.
Did you know he was going to be the biggest star back then when you was with him? Did you know he was going to be this big even in 2024?
It was weird because I had a ground floor. I had a ground floor seat to watch his career almost from the very get go. We would go to the West Coast, and he was working out there. I think for Rick Bassman, I think, but he was working out there, so he would get a dart match, and we'd come back a few months later, and he'd get another dart match, and he'd get a little better, and he'd get a little better, and the physique wise, he was actually, I think, a competitive bodybuilder out there. And he moved from Massachusetts, I think it is. Just moved out there, and he was a competitive bodybuilder. He was living the lifestyle. So he was in tremendous shape. But his ring work would get better, and it would get better. And then I ran across him in OVW. And one of the things that Danny Davis and Jim Cornette would have the guys do, and it's a very good idea. You would have a mic. You would stand in the ring, and somebody would give you a topic. Any topic, could be anything from a blue car to a flying squirrel, and you had to cut a promo on that. And John would just slay it every time. So once I heard him on the stick, I knew he had all the tools. But it's always a question. You never know. You never know how you're gonna be perceived up there. It's easy to get derailed. One bad little thing, can sour them on you. But he put his head down and just went to work. Doing dart matches and stuff like that, and then. When the whole ruthless aggression, I was there at the time. I was on the road. I just wasn't on TV, or I was doing darks on TV and an occasional appearance on Velocity or something like that. But I watched him with Angle, and I knew that if they gave him a shot, he would do well. But you have to find that. You have to find that magic, that one thing that pulls people in. And when he started rapping, that did it. And after about a month together, I just had a feeling that they were, and I saw the interactions he would have with Vince, and usually when you have those type interactions with Vince, that usually they're going to do something pretty good with you. And Vince even, at that point, me and Vince had a pretty good relationship also. And I remember him telling me, this kid's going to be huge. Might be the guy to carry the company one day. And sure enough, he was.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that deserves it. And I've said this many
100%.
times. Yeah, I do. Every time I do a interview or I talk about it, I talk about him and Rocky together because they really are very similar. It always struck me as funny that they had they had a little friction that they did for a while because they're so similar. I met Rocky when we first signed with WWE. I met Rocky, and the one thing that all three of us, and watching their careers go, from what they started as to where they are now, they both started with nothing. They were, Rocky was down in Memphis. He was broke. He was barely had enough money. None of us came from money. None of us, we all had to work our way up. And Rocky and John always stayed so humble about it. No matter how big they got, even to this day, they're still both very down to earth individuals.
Yeah, and you can see from their presence and their interviews and everything that they do, you can feel it as a person from watching stuff.
They have never forgot where they came from. Rocky. Rocky didn't have it easy either coming up. And John, he basically just moved out to California on a hope and a prayer and made it work. So, I think, and that's one thing, that Vince always appreciated. Vince always appreciated people that were down to earth. Vince loved Ray Traylor, Big Boss Man. And one of the reasons was because Ray was a down to earth individual. He could talk, talk raising chickens and pigs with you, but he could also talk about the stock market, and Vince appreciated that.
That's sounds like an incredible person, the Big Boss Man. And between the Rock and John Cena, like you mentioned, never forgets their root. They know where they came from. I mean, look at Rock now. He's back in the WWE board of directors and this and that. He's even getting involved, even at the age of 51, 52, 50, that he is.
Yeah.
He's always come back and give the fans what they want.
Yes.
And then, so you was in the WWE for 6 years. You've had the right to censor. You've had John Cena. You've also spent time in Japan. You was a part of a faction known as, correct me if I'm wrong, Roughly Obese and Destroy.
Roughly Obsess and Destroy. Yes. ROD. Yes.
Not obese. I don't know why I said obese.
Yeah. No, that's all of us now. No.
So
yes. ROD.
Quite a lot there. You think of the people. You had Mike Awesome. You've had yourself. You had D'Lo Brown. You had Jamal, which is the late great Umaga.
Yes.
You had Just Incredible. You had a lot more people.
Yes. So when I left WWE, Taka Michinoku had left also. So the idea was that Taka was a huge babyface in Japan, and he had turned heel, and he was going to bring in some of his friends to battle with Muda and all the other babyfaces in all Japan. But he cut a promo and he said, "My friends aren't from Japan." So originally it was Mike Awesome, who was already there working, and Jerry Toot. He wrestled as the Wall in WCW. Big guy, 6'7", three something. They were already there wrestling, so they were two of the originals, and then me and D'Lo came in on the next tour. And then the tour after that, they brought Eki and just incredible. The core group wound up being myself, Jamal, Umaga, D'Lo, Taka, and a guy that had trained in the All Japan dojo. His uncle was oh God, Purple Haze in Florida for Kevin Sullivan. I can't remember. I just lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
But his name was Monakel Mossman. He was a big baby face in All Japan, so it was a huge coup when we recruited him. He had just come back from a knee injury, so that was always the core group. But then we would have guest members on the tour sometimes. Nozawa, Oga, some of the guys, from All Japan at that time. Matt Morgan came in for a tour or two. He was kind of a guest member. So it was a pretty big deal. And we battled with Muda and all the baby faces, and then just I guess the cool factor. It was very NWO-ish. We would do stuff like that. We'd steal belts. We would paint stuff on walls, and so it was very NWO-ish. So the cool factor eventually turned us somewhat babyface, and they created a heel faction called Voodoo Murder to battle with us, which was I think the guy jeans that were involved, Matt Bloom, Albert. He was over there.
Yeah.
Johnny Stamboli, Chuck Palumbo, they had just recently left. So yeah, we had a great run in All Japan. Then me and D'Lo followed it up and rolled over to Noah.
You did, and then you also became Pro Wrestling Noah Tag Champions.
Yes, and I'm as proud. I'm as proud of what we did in Japan as anything I did in the WWE. Just because I always wanted to work there. I always hoped my career, after, you never want to, think about leaving the biggest company in the industry, but being realistic, there's always a start date and there's always a finish date. So, but I always wanted to go to Japan, and at that time in the mid 2000s when we left All Japan and went to Noah, Noah had one of the best rosters of professional wrestlers anywhere. They, the Noah roster was loaded. Misawa, Ogawa, Morishima, God, and
Kenta.
Kenta, yes, Kenta. Their roster was loaded, and they had the working relationship with ROH. So every tour we were bringing the Briscoes, we were bringing Bobby Fish, Eddie Edwards, Stevie Richards, Samoa Joe came over. So we had the best of the two best, to me, the two best pro wrestling rosters in the world at the time, and we had access to both of them. With ROH.
Yeah.
So it was an honor. It was a real honor that they put the tag belts on me and D'Lo. It was a short reign. It wasn't a long reign, but just the fact that they put them on us, and put us up there with guys, Doug Williams. The names just go Claudio Castiglia, Chris Hero.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it was Brian Danielson. It was a who's who of professional wrestling, really. And and they were all young and kind of just starting out, and so it's always cool to me to see the guys that you watched, when they were just getting into business starting, and you watch their careers grow, and you're almost like a fan sitting there, watching these kids just get better and better, because every night, me and D'Lo, we usually were working higher up on the card, but we would sit there in the opening match and watch Brian Danielson against Kenta, or we'd watch, Davey Richards against Doug Williams, or we'd watch, Chris Hero and Claudio, against the Briscoes. I mean, those were the kind of matches that Noah was putting on at the time, and now those you see where all of those guys have went to and wound up, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously one member from your group from All Japan Pro Wrestling, Iki, aka Umaga Jamal. What was he like to be around?
Sweetest guy you'll ever meet. The whole bloodline angle and all those things. It's so cool because from the day that I got there, Rikishi was always a person I could go to and talk to, and the Samoan family as a whole are just such great guys. I've been fortunate enough to be friends with them and work with them, and for a number of years, and even my son Brooks Jensen, was in the same class as Solo. So it's like it's almost like the the relationship with the family just continues through all these years. But nicest people in the world. Me and D'Lo did we were on our way to All Japan, and we left a few days earlier to do a match for Rikishi it was somewhere around San Francisco, but it was a Samoan festival, and we ate and drank, and they're just good people. So it's good to see them succeed in the way they are, and for their kids to have the success that they're having. But Eki was something special, man. They'll never be. Never be. I guess Jacob Fatu would be I guess the modern equivalent. But Eki could do so much. Me and D'Lo were standing on the outside of the ring one night. We were doing a lot of 6-mans, a lot of 8-mans, and he slammed the guy, went and did a springboard off the second rope, moonsault, and we just looked at each other like, is there anything this guy can't do in the ring? And he was pushing probably 350 pounds at the time. But we were really good, really good friends, really, really good friends. And quick story. He ran a show in Pensacola, and of course, he had all of us, all his friends come down and work for him, and he put us up in a condo on the beach, and my wife and I were sitting outside, and his wife and we were sitting outside, and I think we were drinking a beer and just enjoying the beach and everything, and he had went inside for a while, and I can't remember which two of the kids. I think it might have been the two older ones. But I look out, and they're out on the float in the water, and I see them, and they're holding on to the float, and they're bouncing up and down, and it looked like they were drowning, it looked like they were in trouble. And I sat there for a minute, and I said, "Are they actually?" And my wife's like, "Oh, go help them, go help them." So I sprint across the breach almost 100 yards. Get to the water, and I'm running in the water. I'm trying to get to them. Then I figure out that they're in knee deep water. They're standing there, they're in knee deep water. So I'm out there in my street clothes, soaked to the bone. I remember Eki getting them, and he really laid into them. I won't go into details, but yeah, he was pretty pissed off. But after it was over, it was so funny. And I don't know which. I think Isaiah maybe was one of them, and
you got
his son. Yeah, his son is just starting to work now. So
unbelievable performer.
Yeah, but watching each other's kids grow up, and I talked to him a few days before he passed, and it's just he was such a down to earth guy. He was such a friendly guy, and fun guy to be around. It's just a shame that we lost him so soon.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites growing up.
Yeah. So great that he was able to go back and kind of redeem himself, because I knew he always felt like him and Maddie, and then Maddie,
Rosie.
Rosie. When Eki left to go back to WWE, they just brought Rosie over and put him in his place, and when we just kept on clicking with Maddie. But it was so good to see Eki get a chance to go back and really show the world what he could do.
Yeah, unbelievable. So you spent 6 years in WWE, and I would say you spent from 2003, shall we say, till 2010?
Yeah.
2009. So you spent more time in Japan,
Yep.
which is unbelievable. Like you mentioned, we've just gone through some of your stories from Japan. Spoke about Umaga, Pro Wrestling Newer, Tag Champs and stuff. I would say pretty much as a fan of yours, looking back now, you've had one hell of a stellar career, whether that's been in Japan, that's WWE, and talk about me from what you are doing these days, because I know what you're doing, but let's talk about your transition from the pro wrestling world to what you are doing now. Did you always want to do what you do now?
Well, the catalyst kind of for that was when the movie The Wrestler came out. I remember we were over in Japan when we actually watched it, and I remember watching it thinking to myself, I'm not going to let that be me. I'm not going to be that guy that still trying to chase $20 out here on the weekends, and so when I stepped away, it was by choice. Fortunately, a lot of guys don't get to make that choice. They're forced out due to injuries or just due to nobody wanting them to not being useful anymore. So when I stepped away, it was by choice. I had a roommate in college, and we only two things we ever talked about doing were being wrestlers or being sheriff's deputies. So it was around that time I kind of started thinking about it, and I was still even when I was not going to Japan, I was still working indies around Georgia, and the indie scene was pretty hot at that time. So I was still making pretty good money, and I just thought it would be a good time to transition, into whatever I was going to do after, because you hear the stories about guys, not taking care of their money and winding up in bad situations. And, I always, JBL was a good friend of mine, and he always preached, to everybody that would listen, have a backup plan, have something, invest in the stock market. So, I'd done okay with my money, but, nobody, I don't think anybody does well enough that you can just retire at 45 years old. And that's what I was looking at. So, I had a lot of friends that worked at the local sheriff's department here, so I just went and talked to them and put in an application, and there I went. I started in their jail. I worked my way to a patrol officer, and I wound up in investigations, and now I work at the courthouse. It's it's a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job, so I like that. It works a little better with my schedule now because I've started my own promotion. Me and a guy named Tom Araquazo started Bullpen Wrestling. We just had our first show last weekend. We had almost 450 people there, which for this area is really great. And Brooks Jensen, my son, made a surprise appearance, and got a live mic, and kind of aired some grievances he had with WWE. We'll see how that works out, but but yeah, just something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to have a training school. I've got that now, and run small promotion to promote the training school, and that's what we're doing. So yeah, I mean, things have worked out pretty well, I guess.
Like I said, man, you're 6 years in the WWE. We'll call it 7 in Japan. Even you did a bit of ECW and Stampede wrestling before your WWE days. You've pretty much been a wrestler for pretty much most part of 2 decades, and now you're doing something and you're giving back to the community, and you are helping the law. You've been a law officer, or I don't know what you call it in America, for the last 14 years, 13, 14 years. Sheriff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you couldn't. you've got a career and your new career now, which you can say you've done really good, and it's nice to see.
My son Brooks Jensen calls me the Forrest Gump of wrestling. I'm a I was the kind of there peeking around the corner at all these big events that took place in our business. I was there the day that we bought WCW. I was there at the Montreal screw job. I just seemed to be in the right place at the right time, I guess, as far as things like that go.
I mean, like, I don't think your son could have put it any better, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we will wrap it up with an inspirational message from you.
I tell my guys that are trying to get in the business, and I tell guys that ask me, along the way, and I've been telling them that for years. I guess it's nothing that I came up with, and it's not my slogan or anything like that. Somebody told me, which is how this business is supposed to work. Somebody was nice enough to share their knowledge with me, so who am I not to do the same thing with somebody else? But the one thing that I tell people is, and this is not necessarily just in pro wrestling, this is just in life. And like I said, it was knowledge that was passed on to me. Whenever you, wherever you go in life, wherever you're, trying to get to, you always find the person that's working the hardest. You always, when you walk into a gym, it's not hard to find there's always one person that's working harder than everybody else, no matter what everybody else is doing, from, having a conversation at the smoothie bar to the guy that's over there, doing 500-pound squats. There's somebody in that gym that's working harder than everybody else. And all you have to do is find that person and work harder than they do. And if you do that in life, you will be a success. And that's across the board. It's not just pro wrestling, but especially in pro wrestling, you can walk into and I've been fortunate enough to be down there as a guest coach and just as a guest quite a few times. And you walk in that performance center, when you walk in and you start looking around, it's not hard to find that one person that's over in the corner, just grinding away, with no fanfare, nobody cheering them on. They're over in the corner and they got their head down and they're just grinding. That's the guy that's the guy or that's the girl. That's who your competition is. And you find them and you figure out a way to work harder than they do, and success will come your way.
Appreciate that, man. And like I've said, I say it to many people who say inspirational messages. I couldn't have put it any better myself. And true is true what you say. You work hard, play harder, you party harder, innit?
Yep.
Honestly, man. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate your time.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
So did I, man. Hearing your stories and about Umaga, Right to Censor, and others in your stories in the sheriff world. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Have a good fight.
Anytime.
Appreciate that, man. Take care.
Take care.